CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest.
Hey everyone, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. I am Jay Rule, and joining alongside me here is
Derek Cronus, or Derek, and also today we are joined by, how would you like to be addressed?
You can call me
Mr. Philip Chase?
Yeah, Philip is fine. Yep, Philip is good. Yep.
All right. Well, Mr. Philip Chase here. Excited to have you. Thank you for taking some time out of your weekend here to chat with us.
Delighted to chat with you guys. I'm excited to, talk with some people who are going through Malazan, and hopefully we can have a lot of fun chatting about memories of ice.
Absolutely. It's been a journey so far. Just the community, I think, is what baffles me the absolute most. It just the number of support, everybody so willing to, clarify without spoiling, has been an absolute dream send, because I don't look anything up. No wikis, no nothing.
Yeah, stay away, stay away.
Yeah, I don't. We want as genuine of experience as we can. Granted, there have been a few moments where some information was given to us that we're not at that point yet, but
it happens. It happens. But yeah, I totally agree with you about the Malazan community. I remember myself. Well, I read the series before I knew about BookTube or anything like Reddit or whatever. I'm not even on Reddit, but I didn't. In other words, I was not part of any kind of community the first time I read Malazan, and the second time I read it, it was when I was starting up my channel. I knew I wanted to do a Malazan reread, and it was one of the best things I've ever done, really. And the support from the community was just tremendous. I got to read through it with AP Canavan, who is one of Erickson and Esselmont's advanced readers, and also a brilliant guy. So it was a lot of fun chatting about the series with AP. Just a tremendous, greatest literary journey of my life, really. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we had him in mind as a future guest. I'm unsure, but
yeah,
he reached out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess before we get started in today's episode, we'd like to take a moment to thank and recognize Silverstones Books. Please check out their website at silverstonesbooks.com, as well as their freshly opened storefront, where they have a large selection of fantasy, sci-fi, and horror books, with many of those options being signed copies. They carry a large number of indie authors, so please help us help them in supporting self-published authors as well. They've also been gracious enough to give us a promo code for 10% off your next order. That code is just DJ Quest. So check out their site, check out their store, and pick up a book and save a little cash while supporting some authors.
Nice. Yeah. And you can get the Adan trilogy from Silverstones too.
I'm unfamiliar.
That's my trilogy.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think he's only got the third book in stock right now, or at least last time I looked.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Mind.
Justin, did we should, would you like our document that our summarizations, Philip? I kind of forgot about that.
That's okay. Yeah, no, I think I'm good. I've read it a couple times, and I did look over a summary of the book, and I looked at chapter 10 to make sure I know where you guys are. So I think I'm okay. And like
Okay.
you guys, if you do your summary as a normal thing, go for it. But I don't feel like you need to do it for me.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, I'm a little socially inept when it comes to YouTube, Twitter, and Reddit. It's been like that my whole life. I just they're not political, but just entertainment figures in TV, television, movies, names, actresses. I can recognize faces. That's pretty much all I have.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I mean, yeah, you don't need all that stuff necessarily. So yeah,
Right. Keep my brain free for creative endeavors.
that's the best.
Cool. Well, Derek, should we spot off our patrons?
We are very lucky to have them. I will roll through them again here from the top since it wasn't very clear. Justin, maybe you can just cut out the first take there. But Jan, the picker of pies and good books, Luciana Etrigan, Ryan, the topological, Damien, the rock of faces, Nate, fiddle me this, and Shield Anvil Dylan. Thank you guys and ladies.
Yes, thank you very much.
Nice. I know a couple of them. Yeah.
I think you know Jan, right? Jan, and I guess I don't know who else you would know, but I feel like you know Jan.
Also, Luciana Tragan. I know that person too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Small world.
I believe that person is in Brazil. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Justin, did you want to take the epigraph here?
I sure can. I'm actually really intrigued by all of this. That's a story that I'm excited to explore more as we continue on. Mother Dark begot 3 children. The first, Tistandi, were her dearest dwellers of the land before light. Then were birthed in pain the second, Lions. I'm not exactly sure. Feel like that's our first mention of that. The burning glory of light itself. And so the first denied their mother in their fury, and so were cast out. Doomed children of Mother Dark, she then gave rise in her mercy to the third, spawn of the war between dark and light, the Tist Idur, and there was shadow upon their souls. Kilmanar's fable, Sabun Imanan. Sure, I butchered so many names there.
That's okay.
Is it lions, or is it like kind of a weird take on lions?
So the pronunciations that Erickson and Esselmont use, I believe, are somewhat like Teist Andi, and then Teist Leon, and the Teist Idur would be, I think, if I remember correctly. That's more or less how they pronounce it. But I think they're pretty laid back about it, honestly. So, that's how fantasy names are. Whatever happens in your head is what it is, So, no.
Sure.
It's kind of the fun of it.
Yeah.
Well, I know that earlier in this book, I think it was when Lady Envy was in Kalos talking to Cruel. He was talking about White Light's wild mane or something like that. I find it interesting that it's, you could almost say it as Teist lions, right? Like the way that it's spelled. Lions have manes, so it was just I don't know, a weird connection in my mind, whether it's right or wrong. Whatever.
Yeah, this will make much more sense later on. But you've met Teist Andi so far.
Yes. And we've met Teist Idur.
Okay.
Yolanda. Well, we didn't meet them, but we had a consequence of their actions in the middle of Dead House Gates. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're gonna see more of those too. Yeah.
I had a feeling. But I guess with that, Derek, what do you say? Should we kick off our first section here?
Sure. Yeah, Philip. So we just kind of we summarize each section, we alternate those, and then in between we just talk about them, what we picked out, and that type of thing here. So
cool. All right.
I'll take away the first section here. A hand slapped him hard across the face. The shock faded quickly as he tried to figure out what was happening, though he didn't try too hard, as slipping back into unconsciousness seemed like a better option. He was hit again. Gruntle forced an eye open and said, "Go away." Stony said he was drunk and smelled terrible to boot. His blanket was covered in vomit. She said that was the last straw. Buke could have him, and he could rot for all she really cared. Stony headed back to the barracks. Buke tossed a cold, wet cloth onto his face and told him to clean himself up. He needed him sober. Gruntle said nobody needed him sober and to leave him be. Buke, of all people, Buke quickly cut him off, saying, yes, him of all people. He told Gruntle to sit up. Buke forcefully sat him up. Gruntle tried to resist, but had no strength. Upon getting up, he was immediately sick again. Gruntle tried to tell him that he had no right, and Buke just told him to shut up. Gruntle put his head into his hands and asked how many days. Buke told him 6, and he had missed his chance. Gruntle didn't really know what Buke meant by this. Buke explained that the Septarch and the Panions had begun their invasion, and rumor has it that the attack on the outer buildings will begin before the day is done. A siege started by a veteran army. Every siege they've laid had been successful. The outer buildings wouldn't last. It was a big army they faced. Gruntle said he was telling him too much. He couldn't think. Gruntle reminded him that Harlow was dead. It was time to sober up and get his grieving done. Gruntle said that was an odd statement coming from him. Buke only told him that he had already done his grieving. Gruntle wasn't buying that and Buke tells him that he has always misunderstood him. He has grieved. Now it has faded away, replaced with the vast emptiness of a cave. Ashes. Maybe Gruntle thinks he is like him, but he is not. Gruntle tells Buke it is pointless and senseless death. Buke replies that that's how all deaths are until those that are alive carve meaning out of them. Buke asks what he will carve out of Harlow's death, because an empty cave offers no comfort. Gruntle tells him he isn't looking for comfort. Buke tells him he'd better be. No other goal is worthwhile. Harlow was his friend too, and from how things were described, Gruntle was done. Harlow did what any good friend would do and took the hits, and he died. But he did what he wanted to, and he saved his life. This is how he's repaid for his efforts. Would Gruntle look Harlow's ghost in the eye and say it wasn't worth it? Harlow shouldn't have done it, Gruntle said. Buke told him that isn't the point. After that, there was only silence until Gruntle rubbed his face and raised his teary eyes. Buke also had tears coming down the side of his face. He was caught off guard and quickly turned the other way and said that Stony was in a mood to kill him herself. She already lost one friend, and now maybe another. Gruntle said she lost 2 out there, the Barghest boy. Buke agreed and said that they hadn't seen much of Hatan and Kafal since they arrived. They were close with the Grey Swords. It seemed like something was going on within that group. Stony might know more about what that was since she was staying at the barracks. Gruntle asked about him. Buke said he was still working for Bauchelane and Corbel Broach. Gruntle called him a hood-damned fool. Buke welcomed him back. Gruntle called him a bastard and told him to get back to the Abyss.
Such a powerful section, right at the smack dab beginning of the chapter.
Yeah, a few of my thoughts here. Just early on, Gruntle's just going after Buke. Feels like maybe he thinks he's weak or damaged or something, and that he really hasn't come to terms with his family's death. It definitely seems like Buke has found some form of inner peace with everything that's happened in his past.
I think that Buke hasn't. He didn't allow himself to grieve properly, and I think that Buke has realized, kind of looking back on the situation while he was grieving, he didn't take his own advice, so to speak. And now he sees that Gruntle has that opportunity. Like when Buke is saying all deaths are pointless, and that's how they all are, until those that are alive carve meaning out of them. And I think this is Buke saying, I wish I would have done this. Here's me recognizing myself in you, Gruntle. Do what I didn't do, and find a way to make meaning out of Harlow's death, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to read that scene. Yeah, I agree with that.
Sorry to
Justin,
your parade there, Derek.
No, you're fine. Yeah, it made me, this section made me think of a lot of World War II or Vietnam movies, just with kind of the conversation went between the two of them, and another example of that, Harlow taking the shots, and falling on the grenade, so to speak, to save his friend's life. You see that example come up time and time again in, our real world war movies. I guess I don't know how often that actually happens, but it does from time to time. Hopefully it doesn't happen too often. But a moment of quite a lot of bravery to do something like that, to be that selfless for somebody else.
Yeah, I liked Harlow too. I thought that I don't know if I would go as far as saying he was charismatic by any means, but not even comic relief. But he just kind of had this happy-go-lucky type of personality to him. Maybe a little bit lustful, but hey, at some points of our lives we all are. Yeah, I liked his character. I was sad to see him go, but I think that Buke is right. I think that instead of just allowing grief to pass into just this empty cave that he's speaking of, he's highly advising Gruntle to find a way to make some meaning out of that death.
Yeah, I think of the little found family there. Harlow is probably the best adjusted of them. There's some people who've been through some trauma for sure. And I would include Buke in there. And it's just a wonderful thing about Malazan is that, there's incredible violence and devastation and battles and all that. But Erikson does such a great job of looking at the impact of trauma on the characters. And this is a conversation where you can feel that the intensity of emotions from both of these individuals, recognizing a similar kind of loss in each other. And the one who knows very well that he's failed himself to deal with that in the best or healthiest way, trying to advise the other, it's a moving scene.
Well, right. And, in the previous chapters, they were so combative with each other. And it's really for the same reasons, it's just reversed. Gruntle was more trying to get Buke, or he had the impression or the idea that Buke is on just like the suicidal mission by taking up employment with Bauchelain and Corporal Broach. Whether that's the case or not, I guess I'm not too sure. It very well could be. It seems like it, but I think Gruntle is essentially trying to do the same thing that Buke is doing here. So
Yep.
It's really cool going off of your point, just the amount of compassion that these characters are showing to each other, even though there's moments of tension or butting heads. I guess that's kind of rare to see in your typical fantasy series. So,
Well, I think I had one other thought here, but I think I kind of butchered it. So
what was your thought?
Well, just with where Gruntle says she lost 2 out there, I had typed, it doesn't seem like Gruntle picks up on the thought that Buke is referring to him as the other who was lost, or at least that's how I took it. But I don't know that it makes a lot of sense now that I'm reading it out loud.
You could be right. I don't necessarily remember that, but it very well could be, being that Gruntle is definitely in this very well elaborate description of one's hangover, which was reminiscent of my earlier 20s. So it's I can understand that, Stoney is probably feeling like, hey, I lost one friend out there and now I've lost another because you're just a drunken idiot all the time. And I'm sure that, and it's not mentioned, but reading between the lines, Stoney and Buke had an opportunity to leave within the 6 days before the siege was coming, but they didn't, because I'm imagining they want to make sure that their friend is well enough to either leave or stay and fight.
You missed your shot.
Right.
But, just kind of like, like they were talking about Harlow taking the hits, maybe now they're going to end up taking some hits.
I feel like that is
by sticking around.
Yes. And there's some things that happen later on in this chapter that maybe kind of makes me pave the way for where Gruntle and Stoney and potentially Buke's direction is headed. So I'm excited to talk about that later.
I'm gonna have to keep my lips sealed for much of that. There's all I can say in a general way is you guys are on the cusp of some really cool things that are going to happen in this book. Yeah. Yep, that's one way to put it.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to read on. I will probably be doing that directly after this. But yeah, I don't know if Philip or Derek, if you had any more thoughts. I felt like it was a shorter section, merely just kind of reestablishing some characters that we haven't seen in a few chapters and giving us an update as to where they are in terms of the siege.
Yep.
All right. Well, then we'll move on to the second section here. Gruntle, leaning on Buke, made their way down to street level. Gruntle's head was pounding and waves of nausea held his stomach. Because of all of the ale he had consumed, the memories of the city were fragmented. Gruntle asked which district they were in. Buke replied that they were in the backside of the old Daru Temple district. Buke makes a remark that Gruntle had found quarters and the only rotten alley and foul tenement. Gruntle said that this wasn't the first time, however, he couldn't remember why, probably for some other excuse back then. Buke understood the sentiment. Gruntle looked down at the appearance of his clothes and remarked that he needed a bath. He then asked where his weapons were. Buke replied that Stoney took care of them and then settled all of Gruntle's debts as well. They are making their way to the barracks, and Gruntle mentioned that it'll be a few hours yet before the shake set in. Buke said that if he asked the destriant, he could probably help with that. Turning south, Gruntle noticed the appearance of the locals on the verge of panic. Gruntle asked Buke what his masters were up to. Buke explains that his masters had purchased an abandoned estate and settled in. It was partly the reason Buke had went to Gruntle. A Gidrath watch had found the first body last night, not 100 paces from the abandoned estate. Gruntle tells him to inform the prince. Buke said that he could not do this, as Gruntle hasn't seen what the necromancers can do when their backs are up against a wall. Gruntle said that the necromancers need to be driven out and to let the Panions embrace them, and to cut himself loose and possibly that Reese feller too. Buke, in frustration, says that he can't and explains that the necromancers would start knocking down walls, unleashing demons, raising corpses to be thrown back in their faces. They'll level Capistan for the Panions. Buke suggests another consequence, and that is if in the meantime, the bodies will pile up. Buke takes a look around and speculates that it won't be much more to push the citizens over the edge. There are tight-knit communities, and it was a fine line to walk. Buke said that he couldn't do it without the assistance of Gruntle. Gruntle was confused and asked for elaboration. Buke simply said to shadow Corbrel, and when he goes out, Buke can follow his hunting. Gruntle tells Buke that he's lost his mind, and that Corbrel is a sorcerer and will sniff him out. Buke tells him that he would if he was working alone. Gruntle took a moment to think and study the man. Finally, Buke said that he needed someone who could outthink Broach. Gruntle said that it wasn't Broach they needed to outsmart, but Bauchelain. Buke said that this was correct, but it wasn't Bauchelain going out at night. Gruntle wonders how many have attempted to outsmart Bauchelain. Buke guessed that it was cemeteries full. Gruntle agreed and said it was all for what? To save a few lives that would just inevitably end up devoured by the Tenescowry? Buke said that still, that was merciful in comparison. Gruntle tells Buke to allow him to think on this proposition. Buke said that he would come by the barracks later that night. He says Stoney's name as he starts to talk. Gruntle cuts him off and tells him that Stoney can't know, or she'll go after Corbrel and get herself killed. Gruntle said that his head was about to explode, and Buke suggests that he finds a priest with the ability to heal. I found this section really interesting. One, bouncing off the previous section, there's definitely a lot of sympathy from Buke because of where he's been before. Gruntle, when he was just like, probably for some other excuse back then, he can't even recall what it is that even, that could be a reason why as to way he's acting, right? And so Gruntle or Buke is just being sympathetic and being like, yeah, you know what? I know what it feels like. And it just kind of feels like they're reconciling a little bit as far as where Gruntle, Stoney, and Buke have come as far as, the recent loss of Harlow. So it was just nice to see that type of character interaction.
Yeah, it doesn't have to all be, fighting and nastiness to each other.
Exactly.
Now, you fellas, do you intend to eventually read the Bauchelain and Corbrel Broach novellas?
Yeah, our plan, we're not just covering the main 10. We want to do the whole show is centered around publication order of all the books.
Cool. Nice. Okay.
So after we're done with this, from what I understand, we'll Blood Follows is next. So,
all right. Okay. Yeah. Well, you'll get to know them pretty well then.
Yeah, there's still a very strange oddity at this point, and I'm not sure how I really feel about them because they're still kind of got this like mysterious aura about them.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that they're one of the most prominent representations of the absurd in Malazan. And a lot of times, Erikson and Esselmont as well, they have a kind of a shared humor. And it can be absurdist sometimes, and I can't think of a better example than these two. So I think you'll have a lot of fun with them when you read those novellas.
Do you think that, just hearing you say that, do you think that it's possible that Erikson and Esselmont, this is a representation of themselves and their banter between themselves?
Oh, are you kidding me? I mean, Malazan is famous, you probably know very well, for its duos. And you can imagine Erikson and Esselmont playing, their role-playing game and doing these characters and these roles. And yeah, it's safe to say that I think, anyway, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Bocalin and Corbel Broach, although Corbel Broach doesn't say very much now, does he? So
No.
only one of them would be doing all the talking, but of course they do have Emancipor Reese along. So and he's important as well, by the way. And in this, it's really more of a trio in a sense, with poor old Emancipor doing his thing. But yeah, that's the playfulness, I think, that probably does derive from them gaming together, and that's a big part of just how wonderful a lot of these Malazan relationships are, I think. So yeah.
Well, cool. I'm glad that I had that acknowledged, because I was speculating there.
Yeah, good speculation.
Yeah. The other thought that I had about this shorter section is when Stoney again took care of Gruntel's sword and settled his debts, and it just kind of like, regardless of seeing Harlow regardless of seeing their friend in his drunken hangover stupor, they're still doing everything they can to take care of him. And I'm just, again, kind of really enjoying the camaraderie, even though in my own personal life, situations like this would be tearing friends apart. Yeah, it was just nice to see someone help someone else pull their bootstraps back up, so to speak, and hear the shoulder cry on, here, you can lean on me, I got you, we'll take care of it.
Did you notice, or I kind of interpreted it this way, but it was maybe a little bit later on in your section here, but it seemed like there was I guess I don't know maybe the right word to it, but it seemed like he was talking about like alcohol abuse, because Gruntel's going through withdrawals with the shakes. I mean, that's immediately what it made me think of, is that he's going to be going through withdrawal symptoms, which I don't know if you guys have ever seen that. It's not a pretty thing.
No, it's not fun to witness. I have definitely had some experiences with that. Another thing that I thought was crazy is just this whole really subtle story about Buke's fears of his masters, so to speak. He tells Gruntel, and Gruntel's like, well, no, you need to let Prince Jalarkin know so that they can kick him out. And then Buke is like, no, I can't do that. And the whole time Gruntel's like, well, why? And Buke is pretty much saying, I don't know what type of evidence he has, if this is really just going back to his experiences back out on the plain with the Cal Hunters and the amalgamation of sorceries that these two necromancers unleashed upon the Cal Hunters. But Buke is basically saying, like, no, if we piss off, or if the Capustans piss them off, they're pretty much going to help the Panions from inside of Capustan. So what we should do is we should focus on having the Panions piss off the necromancers so that they help us. But then Gruntel's like, well, what about the pile of dead bodies, though? And then that's where Buke is like, well, I'll just follow him, but like, I need your help, dude. So I thought that was really interesting, and I really didn't pick that up until the third time that I had read that chapter, where I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know where it definitely seems like fear and paranoia, but again, it just kind of plays off to the mysteries of Bocalin and Corbel Broach, because we really don't know that much about them as characters, as people, as persons, right? We don't know their history. We don't know their backstory. And I'm sure that's intentional. It's just kind of where Buke is coming from. It makes sense. It's rational. but I feel like there's a tinge of fear and paranoia there. Like, how does he know that's how they're going to react if they're annoyed?
It is wise to be wary around necromancers.
Better to be at the
I think
side,
that's
the right hand of the devil than in its path, type of thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Fair enough. Sorry, Derek. I didn't
solid
mean to cut
advice. Nope, you're good. Just a short comment there. Sounds like good advice.
Yeah. One of my last things was a scary thought, is just going back to Boshalane and Corporal Broach helping the Panions, not because they want to, but just because they're annoyed. The scenarios that Buke is kind of laying out for Gruntle, and I don't know, it was hard to wrap my head around that. The last thing, which kind of again all ties into Boshalane, is just their conversation about what Corporal is doing is worse than the Tenoscowry. And that's like really hard to imagine.
Yeah. That's bad. Yeah.
Yes, right? Because, like, we get a lot of the Tenoscowry, but we don't really get a ton about what Corporal is doing. We have an idea based on like some events in chapter 6, but so that was like it was really off-putting to me. I'm like, wait a minute. How is it that what Corporal is worse than what the Tenoscowry is doing? And
Yeah.
it was just a very interesting conversation. And it sounds to me like they're going to make it seem the Panions are going to be in the Necromancer's way somehow, all the while trying to save citizens here and there. So, yeah, it blew my mind, that small little statement there. I feel like that was the main premise of that section. So I don't know if there's really any more to really dive into, but I very well could be wrong. I don't know if Philip, you have comments, or Derek, if you caught something that I missed or had additional thoughts.
No, I think that's pretty good from that particular section for me. I think you said it very well. Just watch out for Bocalane and Corporal Broach. That's the main thing you should take from that. And it's nice to see this camaraderie from these old friends as well.
Absolutely.
And also the tension is ratcheting up here in Capistan. So, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely feels like each section, the wrench, so to speak, is tightened just a little bit more. But yeah, I don't have any additional comments. I feel like we're okay to move on if you all are.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Take her away.
Itkovian stood at the gates to the barracks fully armored. The bell signaling that it was 1 o'clock had just shortly passed. The rest were late. This wasn't unusual, nor was the fact that Itkovian was on time. He had become used to waiting on Bruchalion and Carnatus. He had spent the morning on the walls, surveying the strength of the Septarch's forces that were gathering. From what Itkovian could see, Septarch Kolpath had 10 full legions of Beklites, the regular infantry, half of the famed 100,000. Kolpath's own Erdomen numbered about 8,000. They were heavy infantry, and he also had mixed units, his own version of sappers and engineers and skirmishers. All in all, they numbered about 80,000, he estimated. Beyond the organized camps of the soldiers lay the swarm of people that formed the Tenoscowry, a starving horde of people that had left Itkovian shaken for the first time in his life. So far, they numbered approximately 100,000, with more arriving by the day. The prince's soldiers who manned the walls were as pale as ghosts. They stood still and silent. He shared in their fear. He thought of the companies of the Gildrath soldiers who fortified the outlying buildings. They were the lucky ones. Their deaths would be immediate by way of the professional soldier. Those within the walls of Capistan likely faced a more gruesome fate. He heard armor behind him. It was the two Barghast, Hitan and Kafal, still with ash across their face to indicate they still mourned. He thought he would not live to see the two come out of that state. Hitan asked where the hill bear and his pup were. Itkovian said Fenrir's mortal sword and the Destriant had just exited the building that was behind her. She was pleased and ready to meet the bickering priests. Itkovian still thought it was odd that she wanted an audience with the two of them. If she was going to inform them that the entire force of the Barghast were coming to help fight, the mass council wasn't the best place to do so, as they would try to manipulate her and her people, causing fighting and a battle of wills. It might be best just to talk to Prince Jalarkin. Hitan told Itkovian that he talks too much and that his mouth would be too busy when she beds him. Itkovian turned and saluted Bruchalion and Carnatus. Carnatus noted that he had some color back in his face, which was not the case when he had returned from the walls. Hitan laughed and said he was about to lay with a woman for the first time. Carnatus asked about Itkovian's vows. Itkovian said the Barghast was mistaken and his vows are still in place. And besides, wasn't she still mourning? Hitan said to mourn was to feel a flower's slow death, and to bed a man is to recall the flower's bright glory. Carnatus said she would need to pick a different flower as Itkovian had taken monastic vows. Hitan interrupted and said that he mocks his own god. The Barghast know Fenner, and there is fire in his blood, the fire of lust. Bruchalion had had enough and said it was time to head to the thrall. He had news to share, and they would need the time. As they left the barracks, they entered into one of Capistan's open spaces, an accidental feature of the town's self-contained camps. It hadn't taken much to turn these spaces into killing grounds, as strong points were built, and Prince Jalarkin had spent nearly half the treasury on arrows and other ranged weapons. The defense that was set up made a web out of the city, which was part of Bruchalion's plan of strategic retreat within the city. Bruchalion thought that not a single paved stone would be given up in the city until it was ankle deep in Panian blood. Bruchalion said he and Carnatus had talked with the Talanimus, and they were told they would only fight the K'chain Shemal. They would not fight mortal humans, and there are roughly 80 Kel hunters gathered to the north about half a league away. This appears to be the Septarch's opening move. They're betting that the creatures will strike fear into the defenders. The gates will fall, the Kel hunters enter the city and begin the slaughter. The Erdalmen will assault the other gates, and Capistan will fall by night. He noted that the Septarch is confident, but unbeknownst to him and the Kel hunters, they will not reach the gates thanks to the 14,000 Talanimus. Bek Oken assured that their destruction would be absolute and final. Itkovian said the Septarch would need to adjust his plan. Itkovian said the Septarch likely wouldn't know that the Talanimus would only take on the Kel hunters, at least in the beginning, so that may buy them some time. However, once their gathering takes place, they may find a new cause. They knew the summoner was with Brood's army, and they were 6 weeks away. Snorting, Hitan said they were slow. Bruchalion said they were a small army and cautious. He didn't fault them for their speed. The Septarch aims to take the city in a day, but knows that he cannot take more than 6 weeks. If he fails in his first goal, he will likely pull back and reconsider, likely at length. Itkovian said they could not hold for 6 weeks. Bruchalion said they must. The siege at Seta, there were no K'chain Shemal. How long did they hold out? Itkovian answered 3 weeks. Though Seta is a larger city and its defenders were unified and organized, they held on for 3 weeks when they should have fallen and won. Capistan is smaller, fewer defenders, and on top of that, the Tenaskauri has doubled in size since Seta. 6 weeks is impossible. Bruchalion told them they must make the impossible possible. Itkovian said nothing. Bruchalion spoke to Hitan, saying she has heard all this information. If all the spears of the Barghast were to march to the city, how many would they number, and how long would it take them to arrive? Hitan bared her teeth and said the white-faced clans have never united, but if they did, they would number 70,000. Her cold smile stretched. She said they would not. No march, no relief. For you, no hope. Itkovian said the Panians would come for the Barghast next. Hitan only shrugged. Bruchalion asked what the point of this meeting was. Hitan only said she would give her answers to the priests. Itkovian said he had heard the Barghast had come south to discover what the K'chain Shemal were. Hitan said there was no reason to elaborate on their mission. They simply completed one task set upon them from their leaders. Now they needed to complete the second. She asked if they would bring her to the Fools or if she would need to continue alone. And Justin, just like he said that, the wrench is making another turn here. Things definitely getting more tense.
Mm-hmm.
That is for sure. And you have a lot of players on the chessboard too. Some of them, I love the personalities that we're getting here in like Hitan, she's incredible. And then you got, in contrast to the temper and the heat coming from her, you've got these very professional soldiers in Itkovian and Bruchalion and their determination to do what's honorable, and you've got all these personalities put in this pressure cooker, situation here. It's really cool. It's beautifully done. There are a lot of sieges, and it's an ideal situation to start bringing out, the most vivid personalities. And you really see Erikson doing a brilliant job with that here.
Yeah, I really enjoy Brukalian's, as you mentioned, honor, but he won't give up. Like, and I find that super admirable about him. And I know that some people that just don't know when to say quit. And I think that there are definitely certain situations for that type of mentality, but especially up against such insurmountable odds.
Yeah.
I know that in one of the chapters, he had a huge kind of debate, internal monologue with himself about, like, when is the exact moment where my contract ends with Prince Jalarkin? And it's like, is it when they besiege the city? Is it when Jalarkin is dead? Is it when everyone but me is dead? And it's just kind of, it seems like he's made his decision, and all he is looking for is just, help is probably the wrong word, but like unification. Like, he doesn't understand why, or maybe he does understand, but it's just like, it's such an easy answer. Why can't you just fall in line, So
yeah, I mean, to me, it's frustrating. You see, you're throwing away all these soldiers' lives that you're putting in the outlying buildings. Like, why don't you just, again, make the smart move and bring them in and have, some more guys on the wall? But even with Itkovian looking over the walls and seeing all these soldiers, about to besiege them, I'm not some military mind of any sorts, but I really don't see how you would have on the Septarch side of things, a bad way to deploy these troops. Like, okay, you're going to have these Kell hunters. If they get the gates down, you can send in whoever you want. It doesn't matter if you send in your soldiers. You can send in all 100,000 of the Tenascalri and just outnumber everybody. Or you could send your soldiers in and just, have the Tenascalris back up. There doesn't really seem a bad way about it on that side of things to me.
Yeah. So from the point of view of the defenders, this is really a situation of courage in the face of certain doom.
That I feel like that surmises it quite nicely. Yeah.
It feels pretty hopeless so far.
It definitely does. And I feel like that is going to be what happens with some survivors here and there. I could be wrong. It's just me speculating. I like left field guesses.
You will be surprised. That is the only thing I will say. There are all kinds of, look, this, it's tough. I'm trying to think back to when I first read this, and I don't think I correctly predicted a whole lot in this book. So that's all I'll say. Erikson is not somebody who's typically going to do what you expect. He's not going to go with the tropes, necessarily. So he likes to be a subverter sometimes, Mr. Erikson. So yeah.
Well, we find great comedic value in being subverted the wrong way.
Yeah.
So there have been many wild guesses that we have been terribly wrong about. And
same here.
We've decided to, it started last book, but we made a bet on, God, I don't even remember what it was now, Justin.
The Book of Dryjana.
Oh, yeah. Whoever was right would get to pie the other one in the face. And so I got to smash a pie into Justin's face. And now we're doing that for this book. We decided, let's not do that again. But we're doing it again. So
did you record that?
Yes, it's on our TikTok.
We did, yeah.
That's great.
We had, when Shaik was killed, I thought she was dead for good. And Derek was like, no, I think she's going to come back. Even though she really didn't come back, it's just a reincarnation.
You both could have probably smashed a pie in each other's face for that, I think.
Yeah. But I also, I thought the Book of Dryjana was a setup by the Red Blades. Lure, you know what I mean? Like,
it worked out that way, though, didn't it? It turned into an ambush, essentially.
Right, and like, how did they just randomly have this book? Like, if it's so coveted, and there wasn't really a lot of action around the book. It was just suddenly there, which
Well,
again,
it's the one. Okay, so I think, gosh, now you're making me jar the old memory here. I think the book was taken by Cal, and he brought it to that part of the world. That was what he was. The assassin guy. Oh
it starts
gosh,
with an
Kalam?
sorry. What did you say, Derek?
Are you talking about Kalam?
Yeah, Kalam. Sorry. Yeah. So Quick Ben's buddy. He brought that book, and he had gotten it from a dude in a tower, and he's deliberately bringing this. And you remember he was tailed by the Red Blade woman. What was her name?
Lystara.
Yes, Lystara. Yeah. So that's where the book came. How it got there ultimately was him delivering it, Kalam delivering it. Yeah. So, but I'd have to go back and look at those details. But yeah, so
Mebra, that's his name. Mebra.
yes,
Mebra.
exactly. That's who we got it from. Yeah, yeah.
All right, I remember that, but I just feel like Mebra, who is an apocalypse warrior that's spying for the Red Blades, just conveniently has this book from Aaron.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what made me kind of think, like,
Okay.
oh, well, he's an imposter. He's playing out as, follower of Shaik, and here he's got this book that she's supposed to have. And yeah,
Right.
so I ended up taking a pie for that because there really wasn't any
Okay.
conclusive evidence to whether it was real or not. So I'm assuming in the fourth book, when we go back to Felisa and Haborak, there might be some more evidence.
Yeah, there might be some more information that might revise your interpretation, and you might have to do another pie exchange, I think.
Oh, Derek.
But there also might not be, though, Justin.
There might not be. Yeah, you'll see.
Is this another subversion of expectations?
In some way, yeah, maybe. It's something from the incredible imagination of Steven Erikson. Yeah.
Yeah. We told him, because we had an interview with him after we finished at House Gates, and we told him about the pie, and he chuckled quite a bit. So
Oh, I bet he did. Yes, he would like that.
anyway, sorry.
This book I'm throwing a Hail Mary out there. The bet is that I think Calor is going to kill Silver Fox.
That's the bet. And
That's the bet.
So Justin, you're saying no.
No, Tattersail's my girl.
Okay.
Soft pillows. She's my girl.
Okay. All right. Well, I will be curious to witness the pie this time. So. I'm not saying a word.
We'll see what happens.
You
We'll see
will
what
see.
happens.
You will see what happens, and yes, you will. So
All right, then. Cool. Well, Derek, did you have any other thought? Oh, yeah, you had tons of them. We just started. Let's keep going.
Where Hatan calls, who is she referring to? Bruchalion and Carnatus as the hill bear and his pup. I just thought that was kind of funny.
I think there's some.
And just such a. I think so.
I think so.
wait, what was it? You had a question? What was the question?
Oh, I think there's some foreshadowing because she calls Itkovian a pup, or not a pup, but a wolf.
Uh-huh.
And then,
Yeah.
Bruchalion is a bear, and Carnatus is a pup. And I don't know, I guess I just kind of relate it to when Erikson had in Gardens of the Moon towards the end with the Fete, a lot of the characters had masks and they kind of represented their personalities a little bit. So
Yeah.
I think that there is some meaning.
You mean Anamander Egg showing up with a dragon mask?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
Crump
subtle.
with the cherub mask. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Derek.
Nope, you're good, man. I always enjoy your thoughts. My next thought, Bruchalion's got this plan of a strategic retreat within the city, man, and I just think that's dark. They know they can't hold the walls, that they can't win, but yet they still have to make the impossible possible. Hold on 6 weeks, so they're just going to contract to a smaller and smaller area, doing as much damage as possible. All the while they become surrounded. Man, it seems like it's building up to be a hell of a last stand.
Well, right. And they don't really talk about it outside of the whole you know, the Malazans and Brood's army are 6 weeks away. But this is also another thing that Septarch, forget his name already, the Septarch is not Kulpath.
Kulpath.
Yeah, is not expecting, right? So the kind of, I mean, Bruchalion has two tricks up his sleeve, so to speak. You know, I would imagine that once the Panions are inside of the city and they're just, you know, defending it as much as they can, they're hoping that Brood's army shows up. And now the city will be surrounded by an ally and they can kind of, you know, pincer movement them in. So,
Yeah.
It gives me, just like this buildup is giving me, what's the battle on Return of the King? Pelennor Fields.
Yeah. The one where the Riders of Rohan show up, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I
Fields.
don't know if it's going to work out that way, but
Well, I got to keep straight faced. I'll just hold the book up here and yeah, you'll see. Yeah. You will be in awe. I will just say that.
Is it hard for you to not speak about these
It
things?
is so hard.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm biting my tongue right now. Yeah. But I will say that Capusan, if you made a list of like top 10 battles from Malazan, I'm pretty sure Capistan would be in most people's list. It's tremendous, and you're going to come across some other big ones in the series beyond this. Yeah. I mean, you guys got so much to look forward to. Yeah,
That's good. That's good. The one that stands out in my mind right now is the River Vathar.
Yeah.
Very memorable to me. But also the unbeknownst to Bruchalion is they're just kind of anticipating the Talani Mass to just, as soon as they're summoned, to be gone.
Yeah.
However, Silver Fox is part of Brood's army, and if she is the summoner, could summon them to stay.
She could do that.
Whether that happens or not, this is probably a moment where you're biting your tongue again.
My tongue is like I might have a hole in it right now.
well, I just think like even if the Tlanimus take out the Kill Hunters, that's still like a huge like weight. So kind of come off. Even if they didn't do anything else, I'd have to think that's going to buy them some time, to help the city. But that's kind of my last thought. Is I just can't shake the feeling that Dujek and Brood, I don't know that they're really 6 weeks away. It's just something in my gut tells me that they're closer, and it's just kind of a diversion tactic. They're going to show up sooner and surprise.
Philip, I know it's been kind of insinuated throughout the book, but as you've pointed out with the subversion methods and tactics, is the relationship between the Panions and the Kel and the K'chain Shemal elaborated on? Because while we have our speculations and our theories and our wild left guesses, I hope it's one that there is closure for.
You will have clarity on that within Memories of Ice, but you got a long way to go. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yes. The answer is yes. Yeah.
Yay.
I can live with that answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
No more holes in your tongue on that one.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, I mean, from what I understand about the K'chain Shemal and just kind of relating, my very little knowledge about history is if the K'chain Shemal were here before the First Empire, right? Then my guess is, being that dinosaurs existed before humans did, that the K'chain Shemal somehow made use of these animals, much like the First Empire and the Soul Taken.
Yeah. Well, all I'm going to tell you is at some point, I would advise you before the ending of Memories of Ice to go back to the prologue and reread the prologue.
We've been told that. Yeah.
Okay.
But we were told after we read the book to go back to the prologue.
That works too. But I feel like, that would be fine. Yeah.
So the answer to that question is in the prologue?
Kind of. I mean, just remembering the prologue will be helpful for you to make sense of stuff at the end. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the prologue as it stands currently. Yeah. I don't think a lot of information has been revealed yet.
Right. Not yet.
It's still in my head. It's still there. It exists rent free, so to speak. So yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you. All right. Well, lovely conversation on that section. I don't know how about you all feel, but should we move on to
Let's do it.
the girth of this chapter?
Yeah, take it away.
All right, I will forewarn you. I don't know how well this is going to come out in a verbal form. It sounds fine reading it, but I cut out so much of these conversations in hopes to make the summary a little bit less daunting to read. But here we go. The council hall was a large domed chamber. The 14 priests of the council sat in a row and silent behind the carved hinged masks of their gods. Bruchalion stopped in the middle of the chamber and introduced Hatan and Kafal, emissaries of the white-faced Barghast. Bruchalion excused himself, and then Wrath Decembre told him to stay, as there were matters to discuss after they had concluded with the Barghast. Hatan begins with, "The white faces are in mourning," and then Wrath Direct interrupts and to say it's a crazy time to come with the same claim that has already been rejected. The answer was no the first time, no the second time, no every time, and the matter was to be closed. Hatan defiantly said to the council that it was not closed. Hatan told Rathdrek that he was a fart-mouthed runt. She spread her arms out wide and told them to attend to her words, but ignore them at your peril. Kafal started to chant, and the air swirled around the two Barghasts. Guards reach for weapons. In haste, Carnatus pushes past Itkovian and tells the guards to wait. He tells them all to look carefully upon the sorcery they see before them. The Barghast spirits have assembled. All was silent except for Kafal's soft chant. Bruchalion leans to Itkovian and asks if he knew what they were witnessing. Itkovian tells Bruchalion that this is an old petition, that the Barghast claim that this land under Campistan was once theirs. The council and its members had heeded the Destriant's words and were now once again seated. Had the moment not been so tense, Itkovian would have grinned at the anxiousness of the gods. Hatan tells the council that this is no longer a request, but a demand, and recaps the past reasons for rejecting their claim. If they won't see a reason, then she'll force the issue. Wrathhood laughed and then said the walls are within a few hours before annihilation, and yet they're threatening by force? Hatan grinned and explained that early Daru records say the land wasn't occupied. The oldest buildings were not Barghast built. The Barghast lived in the north and only made rare pilgrimages to this area. She then recites the Barghast past responses. This was a holy ground, and the Barghast don't live on their holy ground where their ancestors were buried. The early Kapan tribes found only the Barghast barrows and built on top of them. Hatan explains that while this cannot be undone, her requests were simple: formal recognition of their ownership and their right to pilgrimage. Hatan finished by saying that the council had denied their request over and over again, but this time the Barghast patience was at an end. Wrath, Shadowthrone, laughter was heard. He said that with the city about to fall to the Panions, that they should just freely give what they are about to lose. Hatan shook her head and said that their patience had ended. She explains that their past requests are no longer sought after. The city will fall, and the Panions will offer no welcome. Crossing her arms, she said that regardless of the circumstances, the Barghast pilgrims must be answered. A gasp was heard from Wrath, Queen of Dreams. Hatan looked in her direction and said that she knew the truth of it. Wrath, Queen of Dreams replied that very few know the truth of it. Wrathburn, Wrathhood, and Wrath Shadowthrone all react and voice their opinions on the matter. Wrath Shadowthrone being more intense and said to his fellow council members that they must address the matter to approve or deny. Hatan says that denial will not force their hand into defending this land. She explains that her father, Humbrol Tur, had guessed that they may be denied, and if so, they will accept their loss, but no one in the room will be leaving with their lives. After a long moment of silence, the Wrath Council starts to bicker amongst themselves. Some understand what is happening and some do not. Itkovian stopped listening to the bickering and he focused on Hatan. She was trembling only slightly, not enough for anyone else to notice. Shield Anvil thinks he knows why. Carnatus slowly withdrew, going back to the side of Bruchalion. Shield Anvil observes Carnatus looking at the silent Wrath Fenner, sensing that Carnatus has come to the same conclusion as he has. Idcovian and Carnatus realize that the bones Hatan seeks must be the remains of their mortal gods, and that the Barghast themselves weren't ever certain they were there until now. Idcovian also realizes Hatan's father, Humbrol Tur, will need them to unify the clans to make war/defend against the Panion, though Idcovian wonders how they will get them out of the besieged city. Wrath, Queen of Dreams, who is the one who knows where the bones have been gathered, agrees to Hatan's request and says they will be returned. Though it will take some time to get to the resting place, Wrath, Queen of Dreams asks if in the meantime she could have a discussion with the Mortal Sword. Hatan scowled and said that her patience was short, but go ahead anyway. Meanwhile, the council discusses tactics with the Grey Swords. Wrath Shadowthrone and Wrath Baru argue about the outside fortifications. Wrath Queen of Dreams interrupts and tells them enough. She then asks Bruchalion about Shield Anvil's return to the city in the accompaniment of large wolves that haven't been seen in centuries. Workers come in and start digging in the floor of the chamber. Wrath Queen continued on and explained that they were unsuccessful in getting information out of Prince Jalarkin because he was more interested in bargaining with the council. Bruchalion said that they could not provide any info to On the Eye, as their employer was absent and has not told them otherwise. Wrath Shadowthrone chimes in and states that this will get them nowhere and to fetch the prince, because there were two mages, the necromancers, and a merchant, Karuli, that Wrath Shadowthrone wanted to know more of. He spouts off some truths they had found out about the two mages and the merchant. He then asked Idcovian what he thought. Idcovian said that the council members' logic was sound enough, but he couldn't answer and suggested Wrath Shadowthrone inquire of the mages himself. Wrathhood suggested postponing discussions due to the chaos of the digging. He added that Prince Jalarkin should be in attendance with the discussion when the discussion resumes. For now, though, they will witness a historic unveiling. Idcovian moved closer to stand next to Hatan's side. He told her that she played it well. She didn't reply, but the Shield Anvil could sense that she was lost for words. Slabs of floor were dragged clear, lanterns were found and were mounted on poles. Kafal came to the other side of Idcovian. His chanting had ceased. He was heard saying that they are here. They're among us. Idcovian knew that the Barghast spirits were among them. He could feel it. A vast pit had been opened. All the council members moved from their seats to edge closer to the pit. One council member in particular could be seen approaching the Mortal Sword and the Destrian. Regarding Carnatus, Wrath Fenner explains that he has gone to Fenner's realm and learned the Tiger of Summer is dead. Though he cannot explain why, Wrath Trake seems so happy. Carnatus says perhaps Trake is not dead. And then Wrath Fenner declares there is but one god of war, and then storms off. Carnatus tells Idcovian he has known of Trake's death for some time, and then asks Bruchalion for permission to declare himself and put Wrath Fenner in his place, but the pit in the floor reveals buried outrigger ships filled with bodies, both preserved by sorcery, tens of thousands of years old, according to Carnatus. Wrath Queen of Dreams says many of the originally discovered dugouts disintegrated, but those ships and bodies not destroyed were gathered together, 9 canoes and more than 60 bodies. She adds the scholars did not think the bodies were Barghast. They appear almost Toblakai in structure or stature, and she thinks the Toblakai, Barghast, and Trull are all from the same stock, with the Barghast having more human blood than the other two. Hatan confirms that these are the founding spirits, and Kafal says they are finding their power. Carnatus tells Idcovian we are witnessing the birth of gods. Idcovian asks Kafal how they'll get them out of the city, and Kafal says they don't know yet. He says these were the first Barghast to come here, and they have now ascended. So who now dares challenge our pride? Idcovian thinks that remains to be seen.
There's an incredible amount going on here. I just would like to say a couple things, non-spoiler, in regard to some of the big things that this scene is pointing to. A lot of tension. This is a great scene. It's crazy that this much tension is happening within the city that is being besieged from without. That you have this politicking going on. But I love it because it does show a couple things that are very trademark Malazan. One is you had this sense of thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history behind this series that it just gives this place such a vivid sense of being lived in. And, the civilizations have come and gone. Different peoples have been there and mixed. And the idea that the Barghast could be related to these other peoples that are around, that they have some common ancestry, that they're a mixing of different peoples. It's just incredible. I love that sense that Erikson successfully conveys here. The other cool thing about this scene is through these representatives of the gods, these priests and priestesses, these wrath, whatever, representing the gods there, you get a real sense, and maybe some of them are authentic, maybe some of them are not, but you get a real sense of the politicking going on between and among the gods. And they're all jockeying for their, the position of power. They're trying to manipulate events. They're trying to do their thing, much like the Greek gods, and that's a cool Malazan thing too. So both those things are really being conveyed here in this really awesome scene. And it's just incredible that you have this much tension within Kapistan while it's being besieged from outside as well. So good stuff.
Yeah, you think they would kind of put that stuff aside for now and worry about trying to live through the next day.
Hatreds.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely, I think the last section in this chapter is my favorite, but this one is a close second. Getting kind of more details around the Trell, the Toblakai, the Barghast, and even the Moranth, as we'll find out later. When they're talking about the Barghast spirits assembling, my guess is that Telemandus has achieved his goal of freeing his kin after Quickben had disabled the glyphs and the bindings in, I think it was chapter 7, the end of chapter 7 or 8. That's my guess, is that he achieved his goal by Quickben freeing him. So I think maybe there will be some companionship between Quickben, maybe by extension the Malazans, and the Barghast spirits.
Oh, well, all I'll say is you never know where Quickben is going to turn up.
Well, I have a running theory, and I'm probably wrong. Derek thinks I'm wrong.
Okay.
Which is fine.
This could be another pie then, I think. Right?
I don't know if I would take a pie on this one. I'm not like that. But for some reason, I think that Quickben is playing off as Poost.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. Well, like I said, you never know with Quickben.
Right. This is why I won't take a pie, is because I don't have any conclusive evidence. It's just some very small things that Fiddler says.
You will get answers eventually. Much later.
Much later. Fair enough. So the other thing that I had, I loved Hatan's point where she tells the council that hey, just because we didn't live on this land doesn't mean that we would live in our cemeteries. A revelation. It's just okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. They essentially built over a Barghast burial ground. And it makes me think a lot of real world situations where we hear of, mainly with the horror genre, of Native American burial grounds that have been built over and unrest spirits and things like that. So I thought that was really cool. Also, Wrath Shadow Throne, I thought was a sarcastic dick, but I loved it. The tension throughout the scene just played out like a movie in my head. So yeah.
And did you, it was revealed in this this section, what was carved on the canoes? Yes? Or
yeah,
okay.
At the very end.
So yeah, pay attention to that is all I want to say.
Yes. Yes.
What was it? I guess I don't remember, or I'm not remembering.
Tisti Edur. That's all I'll say. But we get a little. Yeah, I guess we could talk about it when we get to that section. I'm really excited to get there. By the way, another one of the things that I have is just I love how confident Hatan is. She simply says that, like, you know what? If you deny us, then you know what? We'll accept our loss, and like as if it's really not that big of a deal. And then she says that they'll kill everyone there, and she asks if they could accept that loss. My question is she knows that no, they wouldn't be able to accept that. So, and I just also kind of wonder, like, from an aspect, is her confidence coming from her ancestral spirits here? Like, are they backing her up in some way? And is this what the council is concerned about? Not necessarily Hatan's threat, but the fact that, like, the spirits are here as well. And it's not just Hatan asking, it's the newfound knowledge that the Barghast have because Telemandus was freed of his bindings.
I would not rule that out.
Any thoughts on that, Derek?
Not right now, no.
Okay, all right. You're quiet, so I don't want you to feel like, you can't talk.
No, nope, you're fine, man.
All right. So the part where some of the council members are understanding what Wrath, Queen of Dreams, is insinuating, and I thought this part is just, it pulled a lot of things together as far as, like, the characters go. They definitely don't seem to have patience for each other. This is definitely a toxic group, and I wonder if that's some
Yes.
type of parallel with the actual gods, kind of going back to what you were talking about. Just kind of a small hindsight as to how the gods are towards each other. I think that this is their downfall, and I think that Cruel, based on some of the things that we've seen him do, is using this to his advantage to try to get back into the fold a little bit. Again, not a lot has been revealed about that, but he's definitely, as Buke would say to Gruntle, making the most of his situation.
Rule has a way of doing that. Yes. Yeah. And sometimes in the most unexpected ways.
Right. Yes. So the way that the council was portrayed, and I know that, like, when they were mentioned earlier on in the book and they have masks and they're hinged so that there's some type of, like, mechanical design to them that,
right,
appease the facial features, really interested me from, like, an artistic standpoint. So I was excited about that group, but also they're jerks. So I don't like them, but I like them. So
one other thread for you guys to pay attention to, because it's going to come up again, is this idea of the god of war and Fenner being in a bit of trouble and Treach being on the rise. And this is something that plays a huge part in later books as well. So this is not something that goes away easily. But yeah, that is something I just want to flag for you guys as well, to remember that part.
For sure. And I have some speculations that we'll get to in the last section about
Cool.
Fenner and some of the things that were discussed. So I like that. I like the different nuances of storylines. It's not just this main thing. There's all these different directions. So I kind of see them as like side quests in a video game.
Mhm.
The only thing that I was really unclear about, and maybe Philip or Derek, if there's some clarification that maybe I'm just missing, but when Carnatus is looking at Wrath Fenner, who is silent during this, like, bickering, and he senses that Carnatus had come to the same conclusion as he has. I'm unsure as to how looking at Wrath Fenner has given Carnatus the same idea that Ikovian had come up with about the bones being underneath the thrall. Or maybe I'm missing something there. Maybe he's just kind of like, I hate that dude, so I'm going to stare at him.
Yeah, well, I think there's I'm having trouble remembering all the details of the ins and outs and the politics in that moment, but I do remember that not all of those who are claiming to represent the gods are authentic. Let's put it that way. Some are kind of wearing a mask and may not actually really belong there. And it is complicated as well by what has been happening to Fenner and around Fenner. Yeah, and keep in mind that the Grey Swords are or were devoted to Fenner as the god of war. He's their patron god. So this could be problematic if Fenner is in some way, shape, or form, threatened or out of the picture. That could be problematic for the Grey Swords because his patronage is something that they, in some very important respects, do rely on.
Okay. All right. And I feel like we get a little tease of that at the end, too.
Yeah.
So another thing that I thought was interesting is just the Prince Jalarkin and the Grey Swords type of loyalty to him. And it kind of sounds like when the council inquired about the things that they want to inquire about, Prince Jalarkin kind of took the stance of, I'm not going to tell you. So now they're just kind of beating around the bush, these council members, and trying to get the information from Idkovian and Bruchalion, but they're like honorable and no, I'm not going to give you because my employer's not here. And part of me feels a little bit bad for Prince Jalarkin because it definitely seems like he's being tugged two different ways.
Yeah, you're going to see him get tugged a lot more. That's all I'm going to say. And just remember that because I'm trying to be clever and giving you a little pun there, but you are going to see him tugged a lot later. Yeah. So, yeah, that's all for now.
Fair enough.
All right.
Well, I guess going back to the Trake and Fenner conversation, are Fenner and Trake supposed to be adversaries?
Well, they're in a way they are because they're both. You could conjecture. I think it's not a spoiler at this point that they're vying for the same position, which is God of War. And don't forget, you've also got the wolves out there too. So this is. I don't know if you've gotten there or not, but
I know that there's like a pack of yellow wolves following Lady Envy, but
good. Okay, you're on the right track. But there's Tog and Fanderay. Do those names mean anything to you yet? Tog and Fanderay? Okay, they will. But they're also something to pay attention to. So yeah, I won't get into that if you don't know who they are yet, but yeah.
Okay. I mean, we've heard like Tog's teats.
Yes.
Yeah. So, interesting. So is it just all like with these newer gods, so to speak? Is it just one big competition for like position?
Yeah, in some sense. I mean, the thing is, it's a complicated picture because you do have the elder gods, you have these other more recent gods, and the idea of ascendancy is never really clearly defined either. There are lots of, that's why Esselmont's series is called Paths, plural, to Ascendancy. There are various ways that an individual can ascend to a status, a divine status. And it's never really like, okay, you're now you're mortal, then now you're a god. It's always sort of ambiguous, I guess you could say. But yes, whoever they are, the gods are always trying to vie for power. Power is a big part. Their manipulations and their trying to maintain themselves and keep their power is a big part of the not only the bigger picture around this book, but around the entire series as a whole. Around the 10 books together. So you have these mini, narratives within the 10 books, and then you have the 10 books themselves. And in both, the gods vying for power is a huge catalyst for the plot. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. So I guess the Fenner Trake thing, that's extremely insightful. But why would Trake's death be revealed from traveling to Fenner's realm? Is that just something that could be... Why is it strictly Fenner that reveals that information? Couldn't that happen? Couldn't that information be shared in any realm?
Perhaps. But there are going to be some who are going to want Trake to be out of the picture, and then others who are going to be like, wait, well, death in Malazan could mean... it could be a step to ascendancy as well. So if it's interpreted that way, it would be a threat to, obviously, to someone who's more invested in Fenner. So, yeah.
Gotcha. But I was assuming that Drake already ascended.
Yeah, again, I'm not sure you can point to the exact moment and say, bingo, that's when it happened. But
I thought he did it through the path of hands.
yeah. Oh, you mean in the in Dead House Gates?
From what we got in Memories of Ice, from when Talk is like seeing Treach die or Drake die,
Okay. Yeah.
he kind of talks about very subtly like him battling some silver wolf or something on a distance, and he says that like he he made it was not I went to the path of hands and ascended. It was like I became the first hero through some type of I don't even know how to describe it, but something made me think that he had ascended via the path of hands.
To be quite honest, I'm not sure if that's how it happened or not, but yeah, and the wolf part also is important, and that's why I was talking about Tog and Fandre earlier. But yeah,
okay, all right, yeah. The whole Fenner stuff, going through Dead House Gates was so confusing, and then you get to Memories of Ice, and like things just become so much clearer because you understood the confusing part of the Fenner stuff.
You're used to it.
Right. I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I'll save some of those comments for the last section. But I'm assuming that at this point in time, Wrath Fenner is saying that he has quested to Fenner's realm. I kind of wonder if he's full of shit. Based on some of the things that we know about him towards the end and some conversations that we've had about his authenticity, so to speak. So I just can't help but think that.
That's a legit observation, I would say.
All right, cool. I didn't have any other comments because the things that they find get talked about at the end. So I reserved more of those talking points for the last section, because it's kind of an extenuation of what happens at the end and all of the sixth section. But I'm ready to move on. If you guys are, Derek, you've been quiet through this. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this very elaborate section.
I do have a thought, actually, and it kind of came to me the second time I read this chapter. And Philip, if it's just like totally not a thing, like go ahead and shoot it down. It's not going to hurt my feelings. But I'm wondering about, so like the Panion, the Doman, and just like from looking at the map, like the territory that they cover. And we learned from Lady Envy that I'm pretty sure she said that they were like a seafaring people to some extent.
They have a lot of coast. They have a lot of coast. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the Barghast were seafaring people. I'm wondering if this is not maybe some sort of like war of revenge or something. I don't know. I wonder how big of a, like, what is the Panion's goal? Do they want to take over the whole continent, or are they just like looking to carve out their own little like piece of it?
Now you're asking a very good question there, Derek. That's a really good question. War of revenge. You're going to see eventually what this is and how perceptive that question was. It might not be exactly the War of Revenge you're thinking, though. So that's all I can say for now without getting into spoilers. But that's a great, great question. Yeah.
It's not the Barghast, it's the Jaghut.
Well, you're going to find out. That's all I can say. But again, do pay attention to the prologue.
Fair enough.
All right. That was my only thought there. I was holding on to, Justin.
No worries. No, that was a great question.
Yep. Really good question. Yep.
So, all right, take her away, sir.
All right. My last section here. Stoney told Gruntle he needed to apologize, but not to her, as there was no reason to apologize for who he always was and would be. No, he needed to apologize to Master Karuli. Gruntle interrupted her and said Karuli was no longer his master. She told Gruntle that Karuli had saved all of them, even his worthless hide. Gruntle crossed his arms and asked how he managed that. He didn't see any lightning or magic from his nasty lord. Stoney called him an idiot and said that they had all gone down. They were in a world of hurt, and that priest had taken all their souls away. So as far as the Kachane Shemal were concerned, They were dead. Didn't Gruntle remember dreaming, pulled into the Elder God's own warren? She remembered everything. Gruntle said he was too busy dying for real. She called him a pig and said that was true, and Karuli had saved him from that too. The last thing she remembered was getting tossed around by the Kachin Shamal. Then she woke up with some kind of wolf over her, and she knew nothing was getting past it. Gruntle asked if they were some sort of servant to the Elder God. She said no, not a servant, but friends. That instantly won over Stoney's loyalty. She would fight for him because she knew he would fight for her. Gruntle thought he was still hallucinating. She said not to worry about her, but Karuli and his Elder God had saved him, so he was going to apologize, and if he had half a brain, he would pledge his allegiance to him. Gruntle said that wasn't going to happen. Well, he'd apologize, but he didn't want anything to do with anyone's gods. She told him she knew he wasn't that smart, but she needed to offer anyways. She asked where Buke was. Gruntle wasn't sure. Buke was only delivering him. She said the Elder God saved him too, and Mancy. If he was smart, he would quit the contract. Gruntle told her no one was as smart as she was. Stoney, being modest, said she knew that. As they left the compound, Gruntle's withdrawal symptoms had lessened since he had eaten instead of drinking. Though he had to walk faster to keep pace with Stoney, they passed by the cemetery and eventually reached the Temple District. Gruntle was irritated and said he had just come from here. If Karuli was nearby, why didn't she just come get him and save him the walk? Stoney said she did come and get him, but he smelled like piss. He needed a bath and food. She wasn't going to baby him through all of that. Gruntle had a daydream that he wished all women were like Stoney. Then he had second thoughts, as that would actually be a nightmare. She told him they had arrived and to wipe that dumb look off his face. Gruntle was underwhelmed at the dumpy building Karuli was stationed at. Stoney said he was a man of modesty, and with the current situation, it was cheap. Turns out a whole family had committed suicide within the last week, and while Karuli mourned their deaths, there was a certain amount of delight involved as well. So now it's a temple. Gruntle said he would not offer any single sign of faith, and Karuli better understand that. Stoney said no one expects anything of him and let him in. Stoney pointed out how the doors were built defensively. The door was bigger than the frame, so it couldn't be kicked in. The Grey Swords are expecting a house-to-house fight once the walls fall, and it's going to be nastier than the Panions anticipate. Gruntle didn't think it was a great sign that the defense assumed the loss of the walls. The city was a death trap. As they went inside, it smelled of lye soap and bile. Stoney explained how the wife had crawled into the main room to die as her intestines followed her. Stoney gained Karuli's attention, and Gruntle thanked him for saving his life and apologized for not being so pleasant about it. He'd be on his way out now. Karuli asked him to wait a moment, as he had something for his friend Buke, who would help on his journey. It was a little clay bird. Karuli gave him instructions to crush it into a powder and mix it with cooled water that had been boiled for at least 100 heartbeats. Once mixed, Buke needs to drink all of it. It will ease the pain in his stomach and other benefits that he will discover in time. Gruntle said Buke wasn't a very trusting person. Karuli told him to say that his quarry would elude him otherwise, and to achieve his goals, he needs to accept allies. Gruntle must accept help as well. Gruntle agreed. Stoney asked what they were talking about, and Karuli said it was a private conversation, and he had instructions for her as well. Also, there were no debts between Gruntle and him or Karuli. Gruntle found his way out and told Stoney they would talk later. Karuli told Stoney that Gruntle had a difficult path ahead. She said he avoids them at all costs. Once things get hard, he turns the other way. Karuli said sometimes there is no other choice. Stoney asked what it was that she was to do. Karuli only asked her to stay close. Stoney said she would try, but he had a knack for not being found. Karuli remarked that he thought that talent was going to fail rather soon.
Well, there's so much going on there. And so much of it is, it's like an iceberg. Like you see right now, without having read the entire series, you probably get maybe 10% of what's going on there. And then there's this 90% underneath the surface that I can't say anything about because I would spoil stuff. But yeah, there's just a lot going on in that scene. Yeah.
So it's what Stoney says about Cruel that kind of goes back to my earlier comment about him taking advantage of the bickering gods, right? and the curse that was befalled on him by Calor.
Yep.
So he's, making the best of the situation, which I think he's doing what he's doing. The recruitment of Tak, as what I'm assuming is the second ascension of Trake, as well as the installment of Silver Fox, right?
Yeah.
Bran Cole at the beginning of Gardens of the Moon to kind of be this human to Lan that hasn't existed for however many years, right? Yeah, he knows something is coming. What, I don't know, but I feel like again it kind of goes back to this Talon Jaghut thing that we get in the prologue, and he's slowly building, as Stoney says, not worthless worshippers, but friends.
Yeah.
People to make him be remembered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. You're gonna have a bunch of these things answered in the course of this book. And it'll be interesting to see how you guys I mean your predictions are very astute. And you're on the right track in many ways, and you're gonna be surprised in other ways. So yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
It is. Which I really appreciate Derek kind of reaching out and being like, "Hey, do you want to like document our going through of this series?" I had known
Very
nothing
cool.
about it.
Yeah.
I had just finished The Wheel of Time, and he was just like, "Hey, there's this other fantasy series that was supposed to be really good. We should just do it." We knew nothing about it, so we're taking advantage of the fact that we don't know anything about it. All we know is what we've read. So
Yeah. You're doing a marvelous job with it.
thank you. I appreciate the vote of confidence.
Yeah.
It is fun to get that, that validation. It's interesting to hear you say there's so much going on in this section, because I didn't have a ton of comments on it. I really only jotted down one, but just as I reread through my summary here, the little clay bird, it kind of makes me think of the contraption that Duiker breaks at the end of Deadhouse Gates that was meant for Coltane.
Right. But Duiker ends up taking it himself. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know how it's going to work out, but it makes me think of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you will see what that does. Yeah, that's all I can say. But it's important. And so is the whole dialogue in this section. And Karuli is a very interesting character, somewhat mysterious character here. So yeah, you'll gradually get your answers, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I think Karuli is on to Gruntle and Buke about their plans. Whether this is something that Karuli and Buke have had a conversation about, it's not mentioned. I'm guessing that they haven't had that conversation, but Karuli is basically saying that he agrees with them. And I think that this bird, while ailing some type of tummy ache, will also make him impervious to Corbral's sorceress, whatever. Make him hard to be detected, yeah.
That's a guess, yeah, okay.
That's where I think it's going to go. I don't know where else, but yeah. The other thing that I thought was really funny was just this really dark humor around, the dark humor that happens between Stoney and Gruntle about the lady who had killed herself and had dragged herself into that part of the room, grabbing her entrails. And Gruntle's just like, well, maybe she was answering the door for the milkman to cancel his order or something like that. It was just like, come on, Gruntle. Like, seriously?
Yeah.
So
Gruntle's a great character. And I feel like I'll be interested to hear what you think of him.
Okay. I also kind of feel like with the whole Cruel thing and his followers, that there's going to be some type kind of similar to the Crippled God and his House of Chains. There's going to be a new house that is centered around Cruel.
That's interesting. Yeah. I can't say much without spoiling, but I will say that Cruel has his own apparatus, let's put it that way, that he has created in a way. The Elder Gods are in a totally different category in so many ways. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say right now because I don't want to spoil anything, ruin anything for you guys. But yeah.
Well, okay, fair enough. Okay, all right,
If
cool.
you ever, though, at some point in the series, you want to have a conversation about the magic and Warrens and all that, it's not time yet, but at a certain point, you're going to want to have that conversation with like a Malazan veteran, I think. But yeah,
Okay, all right.
Very cool.
not that they're unrelated to the houses, of course, as well, right? So, yeah.
Right. And we've gotten little teases of that, the Warrens, the Azath, the realms,
Yep.
they'll
Yep.
all be connected in some way, shape, or form, kind of like oppositionally at times. So I don't know if it's like Team Azath, Team Warren, or Team Hold, that type of thing. But yeah, that's good advice. We'll probably employ a Malazan veteran to talk about the magic.
Yeah. Cool. Right.
Really, my only thought that I had jotted down in this section, Justin, you and I talked a little bit about already, but Caruli asks Stoney to stay close to Gruntle, and I feel like it must be somehow in regards to shadowing Bauchelane or Corval, whichever one's running out trying to murder people.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just kind of what made sense to me.
Well, there are a lot of threats. That's for sure. And that it's good advice to stick to your friends in times like this. So yeah, you will see. You will actually see pretty soon, probably.
All right. Well, that's
Cool.
good. Well, I'm ready to finish her off if you all are.
All right.
Sure. Yep.
All right. The entire pit had been exposed, gutting most of the thrall's floor. Hatan knelt, head bowed, in front of the first boat. Itkovian had entered the pit to do his own examination, with Kafal following in silence. Itkovian sees the ships are carved with pictures, scenes of battles at sea. Some of the Barghast fighting a tall, lithe species with angular faces and large, almond-shaped eyes. As Itkovian crouched to study one such panel, Kafal calls them Tistin Ur, the gray-skinned demons, who collected heads, yet kept the victims living. Heads that remained watchful, bodies that worked ceaselessly, demons who dwelt in shadows. The founding spirits drove the demons back into their underworld, the Forest of Shadows. The founding spirits fought them on the blue wastes. Kafal then went silent, then continued to explain that shouldermen believed it was the Barghast birth realm, but now it was the sea, the oceans. Kafal elaborates that the Barghast drove the Tistin Ur from the blue wastes and drove the demons back to their underworld, the Forest of Shadows. A realm said to lie to the southeast of here. Itkovian says that it was another continent, perhaps. Itkovian tells them that he's heard stories of a continent in the direction Kafal had stated. Itkovian also says that the Tist Ande and their shadow kin, the Tist Idur. Shield Anvil said that it was a name with curious echoes. Though rarely mentioned, they were thought to be extinct, as the name was associated with dread. Itkovian is thankful they aren't around. He notes the Barghast language is akin to the Mass and asks if Kafal understands Moranth. Kafal says the Moranth say they are related to the Barghast, call the Barghast their fallen kin, but it is they who have fallen, who have found a shadowed forest in which to live, who have embraced the alchemies of the Tistin Ur. He tells Itkovian to ask no more, but Itkovian warns him the past refuses to stay buried, and once opened, it will bear unpleasant and pleasant truths. Kafal says that he's come to the same conclusion and said that his father, Hombrul Tor, has told them, in success we shall find seeds of despair. Itkovian said that he would like to meet Kafal's father. Kafal says that his father can crush a man's chest in a tight embrace. What the clans fear most, though, is Tor's intelligence. Of his 10 children, Hatan is most like him in wit. Itkovian agrees and says that she has a certain forthrightness to her about her. Kafal grunted and warned Itkovian that Hatan had set her sights on him. She will bed the shield anvil despite his vows. Akovian has a thought that Kafal has changed the subject to avoid the secrets of the Barghast, with another bold assault on his honor. A dozen paces behind them, Hatan rises and faces the council, circling the edge of the pit. Hatan tells the council to move the slabs back and that the removal will have to wait. Wrath Shadowthrone snorts and asks when it would be moved. When the Panions took over, he suggests that the Barghast clans come to Capistan, break the siege, and then move their precious ancestors. Hatan told him no, and to fight his own damn war. Hatan told Kafal that they were done here and they were to leave. Brocalion reached down to help shield Anvil up. He tells Akovian to keep an eye on the Barghast because he thinks they have a plan to remove the relics and implies Akovian should use any method, including sleeping with Hatan. When Akovian objects, Brocalion says this demand comes from Fenner, who is filled with fear. He then tells Carnatus to contact Quick Ben. Carnatus replied that he doesn't think he can, but he'll try. Wrath Trake interrupts them and says that a battle awaits them, and their lords of war find themselves in its midst. The boar, the tiger, an ascendant in peril, and a spirit about to awaken into a true godhood. He goes on to ask them questions about whose war this really is, and who hides his face in the ascension of Trake. What indeed is the value of two war gods, two lords of summer? The Destriant, seeming irritated, said that title was not singular, and they have never contested Trake sharing with the Boar of Summer. Wraith Trake replied and said that he had one final question, and that was when would they decide to dispose of Wrath Fenner, as Carnatus has the right as the Destriant, a title no one has had in 1,000 years. Why has Fenner seen the need to revive such a role? Wrath Trake shrugged and said that it didn't matter, but Wrath Fenner was no ally, and that he would do all he could to break them and the Grey Swords. He offers help if they need it. Brocalion said that Wrath Trake claimed his lord and theirs as rivals. The masked hinged moved to form a smile. Wrath Trake said that it seems that way right now. He then made his leave. Brocalion watched as Wrath Trake walked away. He dismisses Shield Anvil and then tells the Destriant that they have words to discuss. As Akovian walks away, he has thoughts about what is to come. He asks his god Fenner to deliver them from uncertainty. Woo, we made it through the summaries.
All right. Well, that's cool. I love that idea. And I was talking about that earlier with the whole, like, how beautifully Erickson conveys the layers of history and these different peoples who've been around for thousands of years and how they might be related. And there's linguistic evidence that we get there that the Barghast are actually related to not only the Moranth, but to the Imas, right? The Imas being going way back, which of course they become the Talan Imas way back when. So there's some kind of relationship here with all these, and some mixing with these the Toblakai and all these other bigger races and stuff like that. So pretty neat stuff that we get this sense in here.
It is really amazing. And I don't know, I guess I really enjoy movies where there's some type of historic finding of some kind. The Indiana Jones movies, the Uncharted games. I wish I could find more, honestly, but I really dig those movies. So the fact that we get a lot of these in these books, and it's not just like info dump, this is what it is. It's a slow reveal over time. It makes me so happy.
Good stuff.
All right, so I guess the first thing is that Kafal's explaining the Shouldermen believed it was the Barghast birth realm, but now it was the sea, the oceans. And I'm pretty sure that's what they're associating the Blue Waste to be, is our oceans. So if this is their birth realm, which we kind of knew based on some previous content in the last chapter or two, is this insinuating that the oceans are their own realm with their own Azath and Warren and stuff like that?
Ooh, that's interesting. The physical ocean, you mean?
Right. I'm imagining like Warren's being their source of power.
Yeah.
I mean, a realm of just ocean.
There is the Warren of Ruse, which is oriented toward the ocean. So in a sense, it is more connected to one of the Warrens, I guess, to Ruse. And then you'll if you read Esselmont's books, you'll get more insight, especially into that, because he does a lot of ships and naval stuff, and you'll get more insight into the Ruse Warren. But yeah, as a just the physical realm, the ocean is just a big pile of water. I mean, it's just that's what it is. But in terms of if that's where you're going, in terms of the Warrens, I think just Ruse is the one that is more connected to the water and the ocean and such. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, fair enough. The Forest of Shadows, where the Tistin Ur were driven back to. I don't know. It sounded really fucking cool, and I hope in future books we get a little bit of it.
You will, yeah,
cool.
Sure. You're gonna get lots more on the Tice Edur, in a couple books. Yeah,
sweet. I like that. The fallen kin part, Moranth being the fallen kin. And what I've gathered so far, and again, could very well be wrong, is that the Moranth, the Barghast, the Trell, the Tobokai, and the Tlan are all kin of each other, taking kind of from our own world and the whole concept of the cradle of civilization, migration to other continents, and after thousands of years separating as a once combined group, now estranged. It's just very interesting, and I love how much of this is being revealed. My canon in the first two books is that they were all just kind of like these separate entities, but now I'm seeing that there's some type of relationship to them. So yeah, I just thought that was cool.
And that's true to our world too. We have the tendency to think of our races as somehow always existing the way we think of them now. And in fact, it's way more complicated than that. And really the whole concept of race is more sociological than biological.
Right. It's a social construct.
And you definitely see that reflected in the Malazan world.
That's awesome. Another thing that I thought was really cool is it's essentially explained where the Moranth had learned their munitions ability. And thinking about it deeper, this is scary, right? Mankind or not sorcerous people rely on alchemies to rival that of sorcery, kind of what we get from Tak the Younger in an earlier chapter. But the Tice Edur embrace both. And I see why Covian is thankful that they're extinct. I don't think so based on what we saw in Kalos. But I'm pretty sure it was them that slaughtered the village.
Yeah. The Moranth with their technology, and of course you get a glimpse of that even as early as Gardens of the Moon, really. That they're kind of scary allies of the Malazans, and they have what feels like that's a big part of the Malazan Empire's expansion, was that reliance on, and of course you have the sappers within the Malazan military who have essentially imported that technology into the Malazan army, and they love the Moranth munitions, and that they love that stuff. But that is a big part of how the Malazan Empire is able to expand, is that technological advantage, if you will. Just another edge that they have in addition to magery, so
for sure. It's all just cool stuff. I just can't help but smile sometimes at the things that get revealed.
Yep.
I had a lot in this section, so I apologize. But when Hatan just sternly tells him no and to fight his own war, I love Hatan. She's growing on me so much. And while I didn't really summarize the conversation with Wrath Shadow Throne, he mentions that the Panions will devour the Barghast once they're gone. Hatan said that she could see panic on his face, to which Wrath Shadow Throne says that Shadow Throne doesn't panic. And she makes a quip and says that it must be a human behind that mask that cowers. And I just thought that was just amazing dialogue. But again, kind of leaving on this rabbit hole, when I break it down some more, the Barghast seem completely confident with their own clans. But as we remember, they don't really find innovation or change worthwhile, which stifles their progress. But also, Wrath Shadow Throne is already speculating that they will be devoured by the Panions. So it's a weird contrast because they both just realized that they could work together, to Bruchalian's point, that they could possibly stand a chance.
Big stakes. Big stakes.
Yep. And then kind of get moving on a little bit to the Fenner Treach conversation that I was excited to get to. Filled with fear. Bruchalian says that the man comes from Fenner, who is filled with fear. And I'm like, filled with fear, is it because the crippled god is after him? I would imagine we have to be getting closer to the events of Deadhouse Gates when Fenner is called down through Haboric.
You are asking the right questions once again, my friend.
Makes me excited. I think it's just because like I was so confused about that part in Deadhouse Gates, and now like all of these like little things kind of, you know, are adding on to that. So it makes more sense. It's weird how you get information in a book that is post the previous book, but yet answers or clarifies a picture from something you've already read. It's just beautiful. It's abstract.
That's going to happen a whole lot more.
Yeah.
So if you like that, you're in for a treat. Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right, 2 more, I promise, and then we'll be done. So when Wrath Drake interrupts and, you know, is talking to Carnatus and Bruchalian and Covian, he's like, our lords find ourselves in the midst of fighting. And then he mentions the boar, the tiger, an ascendant in peril, and then a spirit about to waken into true godhood. So we know 2 already, right? But we know Fenner eventually is missing or not in his realm, or that hasn't been really like concise. But we also know the tiger is dead. And I think that the ascendant in peril is Tak because he's running with the Tenoscauri. And the spirit about to awaken as God is Telemandus. Thoughts, Derek? Philip, you probably already know.
I can't say anything.
You're right. More holes in your tongue.
I still have a hard time remembering who Telemandus is. I don't know why. It's just that name.
The little stick guy. The little.
That's right. Justin told me that last episode too, and it's just like that name for whatever reason. Like that's one that just does not stick for me, which is funny because
I like the pun there. Doesn't stick. I like.
Yeah. So, but I don't know that I agree or disagree with you on Tak.
All right.
Talk is important. Pay attention to talk. Yes.
I mean, I know that there was that part that was confusing in that chapter where like Baljag gives him a vision, and then next thing he knows, he's in Treach's mind. So like it's really confusing there as to like what is actually happening. But I think that Tak is Treach reborn.
Well, talk is very important. I will say that, and he does go through a lot at the end of it all. You're just going to want to give him a hug, you know.
I mean,
I do like Tak.
The way the Lady Envy is advancing on him, I would give him a hug too.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Beware. Yeah.
I think she's the matron.
Yeah. She's important.
Yes.
Obviously, and super powerful. Obviously.
Right. Boiling bodies in like a little spa. Yeah. I'm good. Last thing that I had is at the end, Covian's like, Fenner, please deliver us from uncertainty, you know, and it feels that way to me as the reader as well. I feel like everything is kind of coming to a head. The wrench has been turned this whole chapter, and the impending doom, the anticipation, it's just also good. Just also good.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for inviting me to this. This was fun to relive the story, and it's always exciting. When I was reading this series, and though I had read it already once before, I was taking on all the other Malazan stuff that I hadn't read before. So I was reading Esselmon stuff and all that. And it was fun to see how much veteran readers were, reliving the experience by watching me ponder this and talk about that. And it's just really fun to get together with people and talk about this kind of thing and watch you guys enjoying this thing unfold. It's really great. It's really great. So I wish you the best on this journey. I think it's fantastic what you're doing.
Awesome.
It's a lot of fun. It's slow going purposefully, but it's worthwhile. I think I can speak for both of us, say we're having a blast, but It's
Nice.
it's hard to make predictions sometimes because it seems like, every time we record, we either learn something that threw it out the window or, for whatever reason it changes. And now like I keep wondering, I mean, we're not even halfway through this book and it feels like the siege is about to happen. Like, well, what's going to happen in the rest of the book if it happens already? And I don't even know what to think.
That's a good question. You'll see. Yeah, that's a very good question. Oh gosh, there's so much ahead. So much ahead. Things are really just starting to roll here. You guys have a lot. I mean, you're getting to the part of the book which is like, whoa. Yeah. So
Yeah, we were
It
told
definitely feels that way.
chapter 10 was kind of the start of the rolling.
yep, the boulder is going down the hill now, and there's nothing that's going to stop it.
Damn.
Can't wait.
All right.
Well, Philip, we really appreciate you giving us 3 hours of your time, a little over 3 hours of your time. It's not always easy, so very grateful that you came on and shared your wisdom with us.
I don't know about wisdom, but I had fun hanging out with you guys. So
That works too.
We appreciate it. Yeah, I think this is like our second episode in a row we've been able to record in one shot and get it done. So that's always a good feeling for us too. Some of these get pretty long.
Yeah, our chapter 5 episode was just under 5 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Okay. All right.
But yeah, I will let you all go and enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
All right. Cool. You guys take care then, and I will see you online.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest.